Hi, everyone. It's Sarah, No Support Workers. Today, I've got Adam. We're going to dive straight in. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Okay. I've got so many questions to ask you. And for anyone that's listening from home, I've known you for probably more than, I reckon, nearly 20 years.
Yeah, I was going to say most of our life. It's Essendon Station, going to watch the Bombers play.
Depressingly taking the train home early
Yeah.
at current. So this should be a really riveting conversation.
Yeah.
I expect nothing less from you, Adam. All right. So let's get cracking into it.
Nice.
You ready?
I am.
All right, let's go. So by trade, are you a psychologist?
I am, yes. So been a psychologist for maybe 5 odd years, maybe a bit longer, but working in mental health since I was like 21. And yeah, so
21, that's really early for to work in a sector like mental health. What got you there?
yeah, look, I think there's always interested in it. So from like high school, studied it from year 10. Was always curious about how people ticked and also just wanted to be in a caring profession, but was probably not smart enough to be a doctor or anything like that. So I chose something else. But I started 21. I was actually in out of home care. So doing like residential support. So that felt a little bit unusual because, some of the people I was caring for were not that much younger than me.
Scary, isn't it? It's kind of like a sliding doors moment for some people because it just takes one crappy event.
Yeah, unfortunately. And I mean, for these young people, they were, I guess, the product of not being able to stay with their folks or any carers. So obviously ended up in state care, which is devastating. But, it was good to be able to have a working relationship with people and, give them a little bit of something that maybe they hadn't experienced prior. I'm not going to take claim for it being anything life-changing by any means, especially back then. So, it was very grounding and, humbling work.
So is that what got you into wanting to go to uni and chase the next path?
Yeah. Well, ironically, I did this during a gap years after my bachelor degree. So finished that, and then I was not sure what I wanted to do. Explored carpentry.
Really?
Yeah,
Didn't know that. How long for?
I think as long as working with my brother's father-in-law doing some renovations, and if I said explored carpentry, it was doing a little bit of handiwork and going, nah, I can't do this. I'll stick to what I'm good at, and that's not manual labor. These are not working hands, man. I'll tell you that.
That's so random. Sorry, I didn't know that.
No, it was an interesting time in life, and
Short-lived?
yeah, it was maybe 6 months of like just kind of helping, if that makes sense. And then was working in resi and loved that. So and then went back to uni.
You know what I find really quite funny? Because for you and I feel like we always just seem to be like two boats just passing in the middle of the night, because you then took a role which was quite close to my whole workplace that we used to run into each other in the Village Green.
Yes. Well, they're now called Omnia Community Health. That was Sunbury when we were there together, and then Sunbury and Cobor, and I think that's been the peak of my career working at that joint. Like good people, good work, good community spirit. So fantastic.
Learned a lot over that period of time.
Yeah, and we'll touch on it a bit later, but that's kind of where my compliance journey started, and learning a lot there.
So you've gone from there. You went into your next role. What was the next company that you worked in?
So if I work backwards, so it's resi, and then I've been in community health for the majority of my career. Dipped my toes in private practice as a psychologist because I was in a leadership position, which didn't have any clinical load when I was at Sunbury. And now I work for a company called Answer Health, and that's allied health multidisciplinary organisation. So in the director team there, looking after compliance and partnerships, and that's the start of a journey, I dare say.
So how did you go from that? No, actually, let's break it down.
Sure.
How did you come up with the name of your company? Because where did it come from?
I would like to say it was something a little bit more well thought through, but my wife came up with it, and it's essentially put into Google what's a word with my 4 pets' names, her name and my name. So I think I was trying to think of something really marketable and like kind of tacky, and then she came with this. I was like, I actually like it. And then where'd you get it from? And
Cool. I didn't know that. So how did you make the jump from your role to being, hey, wouldn't mind opening a company and being a founder? Because it's quite a big leap, and it is something at times that can be quite overwhelming for anyone starting off.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. And I'm not going to say I'm free of any sort of anxiety or stress, but I've been able to keep my job at Answer Health, still working full time and doing this in the evening or on the weekend. So yeah, keeping pretty busy. But the jump really came from, I guess, yeah, being allocated the compliance portfolio, and I was kind of lazy and thought I reckon there's something that exists, and then wasn't quite happy with what was there, and yeah, so that's kind of how the jump happened.
Were you testing it first with AI with your current role before you rolled it out and thought, hey, wouldn't mind pushing it further?
Yeah, I think with everything, it's going to be tested and validated, and I think like AI is awesome, right? It you know has made life pretty easy, but in some aspects. But yeah, like well, truly documented about hallucinations and things like that. So, I think using Claude and bits and pieces, you're always like, oh, it's great, it's efficient. You're like, "Well, but now I have to scour through and make sure that there's, areas which,
Correct.
is
Yeah.
incredibly important. But so yeah, I thought building my own platform would be a safe way of knowing that it's going to do the right thing.
I love how you like I've heard you talk about your platform in the past, how you explain it as a moat and the information goes in.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. Can anyone listening to this, can you explain a bit more about your we probably haven't actually touched on what it does and like how it works.
Yeah, for sure. Keeping up the mystery. Yeah, so essentially it's a compliance infrastructure platform, which sounds fancy, but really what it does is just ingest evidence, maps it to currently the NDIS quality standards, and then essentially will either validate what you're doing, highlight any gaps, and then the cool part about it is that it coaches you through what you need to do.
I like the idea that it coaches because it doesn't always give an answer because an answer that it could give could be incorrect. If you're coaching and you're asking those next set of questions, you're getting a bit further down and a bit deeper into what something should be and should be written for a company.
Yeah, and I think what have noticed in, I guess the last 13 months or however long I've been doing this is that there's a lot of, I guess, consultants, I guess, for lack of a better word, but they'll give you policy packs, which is fantastic. Gives people that certainty that they need. I guess my concern would be that how does that translate to your everyday practice? And I'm sure they go about it in a way that's, meaningful and ethical. But yeah, I just don't think it would make sense for us to go, this is how you do it without actually knowing how, a provider operates. And from the auditing perspective, they look at, not just your policies and procedures. That's not governance. It's how does that fit into the ecosystem of how you operate and support, the participants, clients, the people at the end of this receiving care. And that's really the main part in it.
Because you can really edit it to be very company focused and in mind of where you want it to go because it needs your data to begin with.
Yeah, so like you can set it up in whatever way you want. So from sole providers all the way to, hospitals or big meccas, essentially it can tailor its responses based on that. But the responses that it will provide you will be sort of like reflective questions, support on what you might want to consider, because like I said, it's really around allowing folk to understand what might be needed of them in that point in time, and not to just assume that something from a computer is gospel. And I think that's really important as well because being able to explain it, walk it through, and to have ownership of how your business operates is critically important.
Well, you'd be seeing a lot of changes now because registration is coming and there's a lot more push for people, support workers to register in the future. And you mentioned a bit about solo workers. Can you go through a little bit? If I was a solo support worker wanting to go that next step with my business, how could I use a company like yours to ensure that I have the policies and procedures in place?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially from the get-go, we map out and identify all the modules within the quality standards and realistically identify what you need or you need to consider. So you essentially get a roadmap from the get-go, and you can start to, either generate your own policies, use that policy generator, and then make it bespoke to how you function. It creates accreditation plans, so step by step what you might need to do, and essentially ingests your evidence, and it maps it automatically to the various parts of the quality standards. So, one document might not just be for one, part of the framework. It might map against various different parts, which essentially means that you don't have to individually tag each evidence. It just voila does it for you, and then you get a better idea of where you stand.
So you could start off with nothing
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
work your way. And to a certain point?
Yeah, all the way to registration. So one of the coolest things we've had in the 20 days we've been open per se has been the number of people starting fresh and jumping on board. And we've got one person going towards their registration, which is really exciting. But yeah, it was a bit of a byproduct we didn't expect. It was for people at the very start of their journey to really buy into it. So yeah, a learning.
So from that, with the documents, because our policies and procedures need to be updated consistently, is there a way that they could use a system like yours to ensure that for, the 12 months of the year that they are registered, that they are compliant, and it will assist you to want to update your policies and procedures as you go along?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing about our platform is that you can analyze them and it will map it against in terms of the quality of it and also the standards itself. So, if I put in let's just say a template, it might say, but it's got great structure, great content, but it's missing something, i.e. the detail. And then you might have a full policy or procedure and it would say that this is mature, it's perfect. So you get a good idea of how high of quality your evidence is. And then also we've got features that whenever there's a change, when the changes come, that you get an alert, it will actually link it to the respective evidence that's linked to that module or component or whatever. And it will say you might want to reconsider reanalyzing. And then the cool thing is if there's a change, it'll say, let's consider A, B, C, D, whatever that looks like, which is pretty sweet.
Is that pretty cool to watch? Like, because you get you get the front row ticket really at the movie cinema as people are using it and expanding it and growing it.
Yeah, like it's cool to get people's feedback. I think like at the core of it all is really about improving quality care. So, I think being a psych, being a health practitioner, like it's always been in the forefront. Is like I said earlier, I just want to help people. And this is another mechanism where I think I can do that instead of, the one-on-one in the chair. This is the one-to-many via a tech platform, which I never thought I'd be saying that.
I'm not far behind you. It's all right. I failed
Yes.
systems technology, so I don't know how I got here.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the exponential lift in it all is exciting, but yeah, see what tomorrow brings with new tech upgrades. But yeah, essentially it's, you say I'm in the front seat. The reality is I don't see much because we don't, what's the word? Like I don't have access to people's data. That's really important. It's really critical, but we don't do that for privacy and confidentiality and also just for data sovereignty. So, as much as I'd like to see what everyone's up to, that's all digitized and de-identified and stuff. Yeah.
How many people did it take to build? Like, was it you or was there another founder? How does it work?
Yeah, for sure. So, the founding team's my wife and I.
Congratulations, you can work together.
Yep, it's very good. So she works in tech compliance as well. So just not in healthcare. So obviously brings a wealth of knowledge. But I've outsourced to a development team because neither of us know how to turn a computer on. So I mean that jokingly. But yeah, so all the tech stuff's obviously held by professionals. It's not vibe coded by any means. So yeah, that's how we've operated and just work with consultants and folk that I've met along the way to kind of pull it apart, criticize it, and build it in a way that is meaningful. So when I say it's just Natasha and I probably mean it's, probably about 30 odd people that I've sat with. And, the first iteration where I was like, this is amazing. How good is it? And it got ripped to shreds. I was like, good. All part of the journey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Were you surprised how well it's been received so far?
Yeah. I humbly you go into this sort of thing not knowing what people will think about it. And, like I said, the first couple of iterations where I showed people like, oh, it's a bit confusing or, this doesn't make sense. And so, as much as our feedback loop is so important for the journey, it's, puts a few dents in your armor. But since launching, we've actually found it really easy for, once we put it in front of someone for them to go, yep, sign me up, which is really, really cool. I've been proud of that.
Because it doesn't just have to be anyone working as a NDIS support business. It can be allied health as well and other businesses, I dare say.
Yep. So it's open to anyone who's either NDIS registered provider or aspiring NDIS registered provider. So across all industries, we are probably going to expand into different healthcare frameworks, but that's get one mastered first and then move on to the next. But yeah, we really we want this to be, I guess, inclusive as possible. So by cost, by accessibility, and realistically not trying to, I guess, isolate anyone in that space. So Yeah.
Has it been weird to see people start from very little and expand their policies and procedures so quickly and at speed? Because it's only as good as what you put in.
Yes. So, I mean, it's of course it's only as good as what you put in, but I like the program itself will coach you through those improvement processes, and you know, in the feedback loops that we've had, they've I guess found it easy, for lack of a better word, and meaningful is probably more to the point. Like we've got this, I was going to say poor soul, that was wrong language, but a dear, I guess, a peer now that was trialing it for us and was coming up for registration, and essentially was like using like the audit pack thing, but it was like a subscription or something like that, and it was just very much just like I've been putting them through, and it's saying it's mature, and that's reassuring. It works. So the unfortunate side of it though is that she got slogged a big fee for that subscription. Not ours, of course, but
Well, I love the fact that it's affordable for
yes,
somebody starting out and, to work through that process because it's really difficult when you start anything new or any new company that have something that grows with you as well over time.
yeah, and I think that's the part of it. Like we offer free options for, I mean, limited time, of course, but yeah, we want it to be accessible because, the truth is it's, hard for people to start up for starters. And then also with some of the changes in pricing and bits and pieces, it's only getting harder for providers to continue. So you'd hate to see quality, safe care be compromised because of money. And that's why we're trying to keep it as cheap as possible, as affordable as possible, which just means more work for Natasha and I.
Do you find anyone that's new to the system, some providers might be leaving their audit preparation until the last minute? Can you really pump out a lot in a short period
Yeah,
of time to get it up to date?
yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of timeliness, it can certainly speed things up in terms of gathering your evidence. Of course, remembering that compliant practice isn't just the documents and stuff. It's, how do you mitigate risk and all that sort of jazz, all the stuff, But I think, it's getting everything together. You could really do that in, I don't know, like I'm going to say an hour, but not even an hour. Like, depends how many documents and stuff you have, but it's really quite quick.
Well, it does go through a lot of documents that you already have saved across multiple places. Is that right? Like between emails, folders, spreadsheets. Is what can go wrong when information isn't stored in one spot?
So for us or for individuals?
For you guys, how to use your system, but for individuals listening, like how to best use your system to ensure that they've got the best foot forward.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the main thing with that is the program itself, Cenaris, will be the central source of truth. So it can eliminate that notion of like, where do we put it? Where does it live? And that is probably like one of the, I guess, issues that arise when you haven't got a system where things are centralized. So, you know, we know we did it, but we don't know where we put it or where it lives, which is a bit of a common theme, especially when, you got people working across sites or on the road quite a bit. But for us, it's not a big deal because, like I said, there's the central source of truth through the platform, or we can have API connectors to your like cloud or OneDrive or whatever you use, so it can feed off that.
You know what surprises me with all this? Because I'll be honest with you, our sector, our care sector, is a really hard sector. It's not an easy one to break into. I'm
Mm,
just curious, out of all things you could choose, why the NDIS? Why compliance?
yeah.
When it's not an easy setup. Like as you said, it took you 18 months to get to this point now. Why? Like go through all that heartache and pain.
Yeah. I ask myself that every day. That's good. That's a good question because the honest answer is I actually didn't start with NDIS. Yeah, plot twist.
Da, da, da.
Yeah. But my dad was in the aged care quality sector. I mean, sorry, supported home. Get my words mumbled. Supported home, and so I was like, well, I'll do it on that one. So then it's like something meaningful, etc. But at the time when I had the idea they were going through their reform, and so I was like, maybe I'll do NDIS instead. That should be stable.
If only you had a crystal ball.
I knew. I think everyone knew something was coming, but I just naively was like, no.
Yeah.
Like instead of trying to build something where there's active change, yeah. So that's how I ended with NDIS, and so that's sort of the motivation behind it was obviously stemmed from dad, but the kind of light bulb moment was getting the compliance portfolio in a new organisation with where resources were a wee bit limited. And I was like, okay, well, if this doesn't exist, and I'd noticed how it'd been managed in other organizations, horrendous spreadsheets and people running around asking you different questions. I was like, surely we can do better than this. And just happened to be at the time of AI being very
Popular.
available.
Yeah. How did you convince your wife to come on board?
She, I'm not just saying this because she's behind the background. No, I was kidding. She's a massive support. So yeah, as long as, I guess like my thing is the commitment to it. I've got a plan and she's, equally as eager as well. So she supports me and, we support each other. It's not me, it's us. And that's really important
But
because
she's tech savvy and quite, smart. To be able to get her in your a team together, impressive with both of your backgrounds.
very coincidental. And I promise that's not why we got together, but it was very much, yeah,
Yeah, I
like,
can imagine your date. So I've got this idea.
so will you marry me if we build Cenaris? No. So like I said, her tech background and it's in sales, complements my healthcare background and compliance knowledge. Ironically, she studied psychology before she moved over here from the UK. So we're not too dissimilar, which is kind of creepy, but yeah. But no, she's a massive support. And I guess realistically, she sees the value in it and she gets it as well. Same values aligned to helping people, making sure that there's safe and compliant care because, everyone's got their horror story of
Yeah,
when it's not. And, you know, yes, they're probably the 1%, but 1% is too many.
I agree. I agree. Yes, yes. I'm sure there's policies and procedures written at my previous workplace because of me.
Yeah.
I do. Ooh, I got one. Like you were talking about AI, some people feel really nervous with AI and sensitive information. How do you ensure that you've built a platform that keeps it safe and trustworthy for people
Yeah.
to use?
So safe, I can answer that really easily. So data sovereignty, nothing leaves Australia, which aligns with, Australian healthcare compliance standards. Going back to the moat metaphor, so the way that we've designed it is the castle is the AI brain surrounded by the moat, and it only uses information that we have put in there. So we being the tech dev team, and then also the user. So that would be their policy and procedure. So what that means is that it doesn't hallucinate on information that it gathers from the World Wide Web because it doesn't actually have access to that. So it's quite specific. It's not going to give you wrong information in that sense. And it doesn't use other people's information. So if you're using it and I'm using it and I get some output, it won't tell me about your business. So that's the, I guess, the safety part. Trust, on the other hand, that's a tricky one because why would you believe what I say? There's the reality of it, of course. But we're doing things like aligning to ISO accreditation. Can't get that at the moment; it costs too much. But you can align to it in practice, and I think those are the things that get you trust. I think repetition, relationships, accepting feedback as well. I think it's really important. And you should never just trust AI. Like part of our remit is that it's human in the loop,
Yeah.
so it has to be humans looking over it.
From podcasting, I've learned so much about from people like you, and also Kindship app does the same, where they're like, "Nah, like we love you AI, but there's only so far you can go. Humans still need to have the biggest say, and to ensure the information that we put into the moat is the most relevant and correct, because that's the undoing. Like you said, it hallucinates and it says some really interesting things to all the people out there using AI and ChatGPT for your star signs. It can go further.
I mean, I guess we're talking about, human care. And
Yeah,
if we put care into, and I'm going to sound a bit existential, but if you start relying on artificial intelligence to provide care when, we're losing the humanity part, which, I mean, compliance people go, well, how does that work? But, the bottom line is behind every kind of compliance framework is an individual needing that help and support. So, that's my preaching message.
well, it would have been quite difficult and hard to build. Like you said, it took 18 months. What was the hardest part of the build?
The hardest part, well, the AI is, training that, giving it all the information that it needs. I say the hardest, it's probably the most labor intensive that I had to be involved with. So thankfully I've got a really good dev team. But in terms of, I guess, it was a part at the start before, I was trying to see like my MVP was trying to build it myself. And that was hard. That was, That's how I got Tash on board, probably from a few nights of just being grumpy. And she's like, just pay someone to do it. So yeah, that's probably the hardest part. But no, I think it's actually been really smooth. You know, things are going really well. We've got a good team. We consult a lot. And I think that's really important. There's not much ego in there. There's just, like I said, some dints in the armor when you get feedback. But it's really, I guess, trying to keep it affordable has meant that we've had to, not use things like marketing, which costs tons of money. So relying on getting to expos, talking to people, meeting. Otherwise, like our $99 program becomes a $1,000 program because we're paying Google to put us up in lights.
You have got a lot of expos coming up and you've done a bit. So anyone listening, what expos do you have coming up Australia-wide?
So we're going to DSC conference in August.
You there?
Yeah. So it will be fun. Really looking forward to that. We haven't got anything planned after that so far. But we were at the Age and Disability Expo not long ago. And then where we were before that, the Digital Health Festival as well. So been doing a little bit of the old circuit, and that's been probably the funnest part, is just meeting people, having a yarn about like what we're doing. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's pretty cool that you get to meet people, but a lot of people get really interested in a founder story. Why open a business in the NDIS or compliance, which isn't it's not that sexy compliant. It isn't. But it's well needed. So as a founder, what have you learnt about yourself in this period of time?
Cool. What have I learned? Let me think about that while I tell you a funny story about how boring compliance is. So Digital Health Festival, innovation, people doing all this cool stuff. Like one guy had a thing that like you could talk on the phone, it would tell you if you had early onset dementia. Other people had like AI bots that could call out people if they're lonely and measure your heart. Anyway, and then there's little old me just being like, you make sure you do the right thing.
Your policies and procedures up to date.
Yeah, stay up to date on things, do the right thing. So what I learn about myself, that's a hard question. I think a little trip down humility lane, I think is important, keeping, because it's easy to get kind of carried away with how things may go. And, I believe in the product and kind of making sure I'm grounded to what I need to do here and now and who's at the forefront of it. I've had opportunities to talk with folk and, they can point you in either direction, and which can be fantastic advice, but also confusing. And at the end of the day, coming back to, if you can provide better compliant care, it's going to lead to better care outcomes. And my old boss, Jeremy, would always say to me, like when things would pop up, it's like, be a reasonable person in an unreasonable situation. And that can be really quite profound or not that I've been found in an unreasonable situation in this process, but just keeping aligned to what's important to you, what are your values, what's guiding you on this path, and why you're doing it. And I think that's been, probably what's driven it, especially over the last few months.
You've had quite a few mentors during the way, by the sounds of things. Have you become anybody else's?
Have I become someone else's mentor? I hope not for this. I do provide supervision for psychologists, so I'd like to think I'm doing something good there. But, going back to that humility lane comment, acknowledging that, what is expertise? It's not me, but I can lead in with curiosity and understanding to help people to where they need to be, because they're probably the expert of their own industry, their own business, their own service. And I think that's really important, rather than putting yourself up in lights and pretending to know it all.
Yep. 100%. Do you believe that you'll still be a psychologist in 20 years' time?
In 20 years' time,
I know it. Or will you still continue, you believe, as this grows and develops itself?
Yeah.
You like it still?
Yeah. And that's essentially why I left a job that I loved, was so I could get back in the chair a little bit. And so when looking up to go, in 20 years, we're at that age now where 20 years is kind of like,
it went really quickly.
Retirement.
I mean, it was only 20 years ago we were on Rose Street. So,
so that was me pausing to figure out whether I'd be at retirement age, and thankfully not. But I'm definitely going to stay in the chair for probably the rest of my life, I dare say. Yeah.
And what do you expect the future looks like for your platform, say the next 5 years, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah. Look, the main thing is that people find value in it. So if it's still running in 5 years and people are using it and finding value and meaning, then that's success. If I'm going to be the more, aspirational businessman, it's probably, we've got different frameworks and different industries using it, which would be cool. But like I said, if we can, reduce that 1% to 0% of those, horror stories, then that's, for me, a job well done. So if we can do that in 5 years,
Would that be your proudest moment within your business to ensure that people are getting good quality care and companies are doing what they say they were going to do?
yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's pride in doing the right thing, and there's also, I guess, a level of, I guess, if you align to what's important, what's needed, it's not what's necessarily what's doing the easiest thing. It's doing what's right. Uh, I feel like I used to work in men's behavior change, doing family violence stuff. I feel like I'm channeling that now.
Go for it. Any words of advice or wisdom, I'm sure the listeners love to hear.
Like I said, you don't want advice from me. But realistically, like I said, if we can, help a couple of people by people using this platform, whether that's a provider or the participant, and yeah, be pretty proud of that. Yeah.
And 5 years from now, definitely to take over the world and be number one in this sector? Or is that what's that, brain?
The
Sticker,
brain.
sorry. I was thinking of those 2 little mice, something in the brain.
Pinky in the brain. That's a blast from the past. I can't remember the catchphrase, but yes, whatever they say, yes. I mean, what would be cool, like, because, everyone wants to be, now I feel like we're quoting that song, everybody wants to rule the world. Anyway, but I think it would be cool if a couple of platforms came together and worked together, like, instead of providing competition, work off each other's strengths, provide support to many rather than the few.
Yeah.
But,
And then and then it has that notion of we're all doing it right and we're all in it together, really. There's nothing stopping collaboration.
No, except for ego. And I think that's where, that didn't, I think humility is important in this process. Like yourself, we probably worked with some leaders along the journey or managers or whoever, and they can go one of a few ways.
Just biting my tongue, yeah, it can go a couple of ways, and ego is a big thing for a few people because it's kind of like you forgot the path that you were on. And the reason why we work in a sector that we choose to work with was to serve others. And the priority was, and my support worker hat goes back on, the priority was always to put another person first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be in it for yourself.
No, and that's why I didn't do it for that, because it feels good when you can see other people achieve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's one thing that you want NDIS providers to listen to today and to do differently after hearing our conversation?
Oh, so normally being a psych, I don't tell people what to do.
Well, this is your moment to be assertive.
Oh, look out.
Go, Adam.
You're tapping into.
Be assertive.
Well, I was going to say find your own path, but I think maybe it's like don't use or stop using compliance as like something you prepare for, if that makes sense. So instead of looking at compliance as a tick box or something that I need to do to make, the NDIA or, my manager happy, look at it as something that you can align to improving the care that you provide to your participants and, I guess reframe audit stress into things like quality care.
Mm.
Yeah.
How do you make it fun?
Yeah, because it's boring.
No. How do you make compliance fun? Because some people, some consultants that I have worked with in the past have got a way of delivering it that it is a little bit fun, that it's a living document. And for a provider, it's your real opportunity to catapult yourself forward in this market. It's not to be looked at or deemed upon as boring because there are ways to still have your personality within it.
Yeah. And I think like in psychology, we talk about like the art versus science of how you're a practitioner, right? And, the science is the frameworks that you work off, like your CBTs and that sort of jazz. And then the art is how you engage. How do you build rapport? How do you make people feel safe and comfortable, heard, all that sort of jazz, which also has a scientific element to it as well. So how do you make this fun is, I guess, bring your own self into it. And I think that's where that authenticity steps in because you can do, let's be fair, some of the activities are boring, but has a personal spin. What's the driver behind it as well for yourself? So if I'm talking about, someone who's going through an audit process, well, let's say using Cenaris, it's not meant to be fun per se, but the byproducts might be. So more time to see more participants, less stress around the lack of clarity, more time to hang out with your friends and family instead of and that's, the carrot that I would dangle in front of myself if I found it really hard to stay on top of it. You can tell what I'm driven by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to have a passion for it. I loved auditing. I'm one of them, and
Yeah, one
I
of
I
them.
think it's because I'm I don't, maybe a little bit competitive, that I love to see where the benchmark is and
Mhm.
whether I could reach it or whether I could go above it. Like my aim was always to sit above the benchmark. So I like back in our day, we we didn't have tools like this, so we had to
Mm,
be on top of the physical form of it. The fact
mm,
that it can go into systems and alerts you that there are changes and
mm.
you need to update this and this is coming up. That's amazing. But also the costing as well, which I really love what you guys have done, because I have seen it people pay quite heavily in this sector for it. And they you don't it doesn't have to be that way. You can start out very little and expand and work your way up.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the one of the negative stories I heard was, again, someone bought a packet of policies and procedures, and then they'd get emails every so often saying, your compliance might have changed. To stay up to date, pay $1,500 and we'll update them. And, that may or may not be the case, but it tapped into that science of fear of like, but what if?
Yeah.
And, like I know people got their business models and that's fine. Well, got to do what you got to do. But with this, I'm really quite comfortable and confident in the sense of going, no, no, this is the price. This is how it's going to help you. If there's changes, we got you back. And I don't know, there's a little bit of, I guess the Robin Hood mentality of it,
You know what? This is the best part about podcasting in this sector, because I get to podcast with people that have that mentality of, it is about service, it is about giving back. It isn't, or it's not this, hungered by money driven crap that you can get in other sectors, which it's true. Like, so it's the fun part. But I like how you've broken it down into three areas, which is, your tier one, which is your essentials. Your tier two is that assurance?
It is, yes.
Yep, and then you got your enterprise as well. So there is ways that you can use your services in a way that could fit where you are at current.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea is to really try and cater to, well, you can't cater to everyone, but try to cater to as many people as we can. And that's knowing what options are available and via price as well. And that's, hopefully get it right. But again, we're like still in that feedback stage. We're still young in program, not in life.
I'm gonna have to interview you in like a year's time of where is it now? Because you're like, is it 6 weeks into launch or 21
No,
days? What was it?
we launched the 1st of July. Yes.
We're gonna have to do this in a year's time to see where it's at, because it would be interesting to see how people have been able to expand and build their businesses, and
Mm,
especially with all the new registrations coming in,
mm.
seal registrations coming in. I think next year we're gonna have the independence looked at, which will be another area that we all have to focus on, and to see what moved and what changed and what you're seeing as a sector as well, and how people are using the system in that sense.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think within that change, it's important to communicate ins and outs as well. And so, being young, like our handful of clients, sorry, not in the psych share, customers in this instance, like are really kind of, I guess the catalyst for change. So, allowing us to know what works, what doesn't work. If you're like, oh, yeah, do you want to have a look at this? So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a nice collaborative space at the moment, which won't be forever because, once things get bigger, then can't cater to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not everyone's cup of tea.
No.
Yeah. So so if anyone's listening, what is the best way to reach out to the team?
Yeah, for sure. Either directly via adam@cenaris.com.au or via our website at cenaris.com.au, and Cenaris spelled Cenaris.
Sorry, this is like a late question. So I know that the name comes from like, have you had four different animals? Like, what was their four names that you put
Yeah.
together?
So we've got Briggs, who's my American staffy. So the
Yep.
RIS.
Yep.
We got Rufus, who gets pretty stitched up with just an R. He's a toy
Not
cavoodle.
You
So
didn't like him.
I mean, no, joking, I love him. So Rufus is a toy cavoodle. So big American staffy, toy cavoodle are quite the odd couple. And then we've got a cat, Celine, so to CE, and
Yep.
then Sabrina, the other cat, got stitched up as well with just an S, and then there's an A in there as well. So
Got real, yeah.
In saying that,
I
there's
couldn't
only
pick
one.
the favorites out of your animals.
I mean, well, Briggs is I mean, I say adopted. That's not the right word. Whatever the language is, he landed on my doorstep before I met Tash. So not favourites, but he's his wings.
So, is there anything that I have missed from our conversation or any Easter eggs you'd love to drop here?
Easter eggs.
If
No,
you're feeling a
I
bit
think.
Taylor Swifty, like, I don't know, like you
Well,
tell me.
look, yeah. No. I mean, I guess we do offer a 30-day trial where you don't need to put your credit card or anything like that in.
That helps.
Yeah, just we want people to give it a crack, and if they like it, then you can reach out and obviously subscribe.
Mm.
But if not, then cool. We'd probably ask for feedback if anything. But yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. People have choice.
What I'll do with this podcast, guys, is I'll put a link in the description so you all can click the link and have a play around with it, especially our support workers out there that are wanting to register, providers listening in. We'll put a link down, have a look, have a play around. And thank you so much for joining us tonight or today
Thanks.
on this podcast.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Thank you. Don't move.